We're into section 2, motion prototype testing. Principle for Mac prototype test. UX UI understands the details during testing. In the last video, we started to pay attention to our Envision prototype and started to do some testing in that. And in this video, we're going to be extending our learning into our motion prototypes, which we started to build and refine in Principle for Mac. And Principle for Mac, if you haven't built this prototype to this point, these set of videos will be really challenging. So please go complete your Principle for Mac motion prototype. And that'll be important for improving our pixels, understanding our interaction design. And we're going to be recording these motions for testing so that we can make them shareable and get excited about iterating our process. So let's get started. We started by digging into our prototype in Envision. And this gave us a feedback loop, which is quite useful. But there's some limitations of what that prototyping platform can do. And so part of showing you and building out a motion prototype was that it allows us to build something that can help us test a different aspect of the experiences we're trying to build. Now, drag and drop, or switching of tiles, or the motion that happens between screens, all that kind of stuff is fundamental in helping our user learn and be delighted by our user experiences. And we always need to be testing. The role here is that if you've built a prototype too far deep or you've made too much work on it without testing with your users, you're incurring technical debt and risk if you don't test it. So test it out early and often, and that becomes helpful in your process. Because our businesses really want to make their things stand above their competition and engage in that. Now our users, whether you like it or not, are going to have an opinion. And the role of our users is that we're trying to solve their problems. We can't be scared of their opinion. Actually, we should thrive to want it. And not just get feedback about it, but we should try and capture it actively, trying to get that out there. Because one of the things that motion can apply in our user experiences is this ability to delight our users in ways they weren't prepared for. And we want to be able to know if that is working or not. Now, we may have these inclinations that, some motion aspects or some color changes or whatever that is, sound maybe even, might help our users engage in stuff, but we don't know until we've tested it. Now, one of the ways in which we can do this is by playing with our context and our motion prototypes in the devices. And one of the ways to do that is through an app called Principle Mirror. I highly recommend getting this as a partner to your application. It's only on Mac devices, but go search your app store for Principle for Mac. And one of the values that it does, if we open up our motion prototype, this has a mirror function here. And if you have your phone plugged in, which I do right now, through the cord, it'll actually take what is here on the screen and make it so that you can see it on your device and play with it. The interactions still work. This is something that you can use if you were recording a user test for your user, and you can then go through and show how these things switch, how you can move them to its spaces, etc., etc. Now, again, all these things are part of our tests that we're trying to engage in. What we're trying to get our users to do is recording these, getting a test going. This is what we're going to be engaging in, and I highly recommend flushing this out, making some changes to what you're working on to make sure that your flow is completely working. Now, Principle for Mac, right? In reviewing this, we want to make sure all of our interactions work, all our taps, all our screens are set up. We remember this was a little different than what our Envision prototype was. But there's maybe some feedback that we're trying to gather here that could be relevant, and we'll kind of talk about this in the next couple of videos. So review your app. The testing of these motion prototypes is still essential in what we're doing, and we're going to continue to add and take notes. So let's get excited about the process and testing our users, because the role of what we're trying to do is validate our solutions, and we have very different aspects of our system that we're trying to understand through the motion than we are just through the clickable, does it work or does it not in Envision. So validate our users, and when we can do that, we can maybe test to see if they're satisfied and if our solutions are understood and usable and useful, and hopefully they're delightful.